everybody, my name is Ryan and I am the Laser Noob. So today we have the Wizmaker L1 36 watt all set up. I have printed some feet that I can put this down on my work area and it doesn't move. I can take it off, put it back. It's always in the exact same spot on my spoil board. I also 3D printed some risers, so instead of screwing and unscrewing the legs, all I gotta do is lift this up. It's got I leave the short feet on it. I lift this thing up, take the 3D printed risers out, and set this thing back down, and it's all the way down. So it's a little bit quicker, it's sturdy, but the main thing what we're gonna do today is we've got the Wizmaker brand Rotary Chuck off of Amazon. So you can't get the Rotary Chuck from Wizmaker without also getting the rotary roller, okay? It comes as a kit. It comes with extra cords, so if you want to use this with a different laser, it has cords with different plugs on it, so you can use this with an X tool or Atom Stack or whatever. This is running about $300 right now on Amazon. It's like $299.99. right here, but they do also, if you look down at the bottom, have a $40 off coupon. So you're running about 260 bucks out the door before you pay for taxes and all that. So, but we're gonna get this thing set up. It should be the exact same setup for any kind of rotary chuck you have, as long as you know what the diameter of your rotary is. They're not all the same. We got to go into Lightburn, change those settings. Then we're going to burn some speed power tests, engrave a couple of flags on some red and some blue tumblers, and clean those up, see how they look, and we'll go from there. So with that, let's open up Lightburn and get this thing going. Okay, so plugging in the rotary chuck is pretty simple with this. So here's our cord off of our rotary. It's got this plug on it. Okay, all we're gonna do is this little stepper motor right here. Down in the bottom of that is the power plug for that. We're just gonna unplug that. And then we're gonna go over here and we're gonna plug our rotary into that. Now what'll happen is the laser module will go back and forth, and then the chucks will turn on the rotary, back and forth, however. So pretty easy. So that's all there is as far as installing this thing. So let's move over to Lightburn and let's get all our settings in there and we'll get this thing going. Okay, so this too is pretty simple. I mean, there's not a whole lot to this. So what I'm gonna do is, once I've got Lightburn open, all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come down here to my lasers. Okay, and I'm going to select the Wizmaker. That's the laser I want to use. Now, once that is selected, I'm going to come up to laser tools in the top left, right up here. I'm going to select laser tools and I'm going to go to my rotary setup. So from here, you can choose either you're using a rotary roller or a rotary chuck. Okay, since we're setting up our chuck, this is what we're going to do today. Now you can also enable the rotary from this screen, but you don't need to do that, because over here you can, if you have it selected, you can enable rotary here, and you can go to your settings and select that and have that show up here. So you don't have to open that window up every time, click OK, blah, blah, blah. You can just click on enable rotary and you're set to go. So you'll see the default, at least in mine, when I go to set this up, my millimeters per rotation. This is the info you need that's going to tell Lightburn, how much that rotary is going to turn to do one rotation. So 360 millimeters is what the default is when I open mine up. So what I did is I went in the book that came with the chuck and the rollers, and it told me that it was 160. So the Wizmaker chuck is 160. All I'm going to do is I'm going to type 160 in there, dot, and enter. Okay, now I can bring that back up and it shows me at 160 millimeters per rotation. So now the size of my chuck is all set and good to go. The only other thing you're going to have to do when you're doing the chuck is you're going to have to tell the Lightburn how big a diameter what your etching is. So there's a difference. So like these two mugs, okay, have, obviously, the blue one is smaller than the red one. It's shaped a little bit different. So the diameter on this is going to be smaller than this. I want to make sure that anytime I'm burning one, or etching one, I'm going to put the diameter for this one in. And if I go to do one of these, well, then now I've got to switch that diameter in there. So you got to remember to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this mug and I'm going to take a set of calipers, digital calipers. They don't have to be digital. If you don't have digital, just regular ones will do. I just like digital. I use these for work. So, and then I'm going to go and I'm going to measure the widest distance on this mug, on this tumbler. And that tells me I'm going to go around. It's tight right there. 87.43 is what I'm getting. So you can see 87.43. All right, so that's what I need to put right here. So I'm going to go to 87.43. Okay. Now that's set. I don't need to worry about circumference because once I put the diameter in there, it's automatically going to change the circumference. So I'm going to copy that. If I'm going to go Control C, I'm going to copy that setting. So if you watch the circumference down here, okay, if I change this to 100, it automatically is changing the circumference. So you don't have to set both of them, just one or the other. Now, vice versa, if I know the circumference is 200, that's going to tell me that 63.662 millimeters is my diameter. So it does the math for you. So that's pretty simple. So, but I am going to, let's see, we're going to go back here and I'm going to paste that setting back in there, 87.43, and I'm just going to hit OK. So now it's set. But the only other thing that you got to look out for if you have multiple lasers and you're going back and forth, if you have different brands, okay, say if you have two X-Tool D1 10 watts, you don't have to worry about doing this, okay? Now, if you have an X-Tool and a Wizmaker or a Wizmaker and a laser tree, okay, now you've got to go in on Lightburn. You can see down here where I have Wizmaker selected in the bottom right. You see I have other lasers in this one. So if I go to my A5 M50 Pro, okay, now I go back up to laser tools and I go to rotary setup. See there, 360. It doesn't change it for every laser. So if you're going to use this on different lasers, you need to go into each laser and set that 160 millimeters per rotation and click enter. That's it. That's done. Now the only thing you got to do is go in and change the diameter or the circumference, whichever one you want. So that's it. That's it. I mean, it's completely set up. So what happens is when I didn't know you had to do that. So when I first got the Chuck, what I did is I put in a mug or a tumbler and I did a speed power test. And you can see what happens with that 360. Instead of getting squares, I was getting rectangles. And then I adjusted it. And over here, there's still a little oblong. They're not quite squares. They're still rectangular shaped. And then, and you can see the difference in the size, obviously. Then this is the same size when I found that 160 and set it properly. Now instead of having, a speed power test that goes all the way around, it was this little tiny square. So that's the difference. If you don't have it set up properly, you're not gonna put in a picture or words. They're all gonna come out looking really goofy, and you're gonna waste a tumbler. So anyway, that's how you set that up. So let's move over to the laser. We're gonna fire this thing off, and we're gonna do a speed power test with air and without air on a blue and a red tumbler. And then we're gonna etch a flag into a blue and a red tumbler, clean those up, and see what it looks like. It's pretty simple. Stick around. Okay, so I'm not going to bore you guys with doing a bunch of video of doing speed and power tests. Everybody should know how to do a speed and power test. If you haven't done a speed power test, I have videos on running speed and power tests, but I mean, there's no sense in running a bunch of video on that. So we're going to get right to it. So I have, you can see here, run my red and blue tumblers. I've done speed and power tests with and without air. And then what I did is I went through and I just did a little flag. Okay. So there we go. Pretty simple. Not a whole lot to it. Did red and blue. I got different speeds and different powers between the red and the blue, but that's the whole purpose of running the speed and power test. They both clean up pretty easy. It's a little bit of scrubbing with the melamine sponge. Not a whole lot to it. You don't need a bunch of fancy chemicals or any of that. Water, melamine sponge, and Bob's your uncle. You're all done. So anyway, so here's what we're going to do is what I want to do is I want to take another mug, another tumbler. So I've got just a bare tumbler. Okay. Now what I want to do is I want to put that flag on both sides. But when I'm drinking out of it, I want the flag to be in the proper position no matter which way you're looking at it. So if like this one, if I do it and I go to drink out of it, then the flag's upside down. All right. I was just trying to burn it. Wasn't trying to do this. Is not a finished product. This is a test piece. So now what I want to do is I'm going to make a couple of rectangles inside of Lightburn here. And then I'm going to put my flags in there. And the purpose of doing those rectangles is one rectangle is going to be one half of the mug. The other rectangle is going to be the other half of the mug. So, and here's how I'm going to find that out. So what I did is I went back up here to laser tools. Okay. And I went to rotary setup. So what I did is I looked down here at the circumference. So 274.669 millimeters. All right. Basically what I did is I did that at 274.67 millimeters. So all I did was round that 0.9 up, that 669 to 670, which is not going to make that much of a difference. So anyway, and then I divided that in half and you get 137.335 millimeters. So that's what I want. That's going to be the width is two 137.335 millimeter rectangles. So I've got this information. I'm just going to hit cancel. And I'm going to come up here and I'm going to draw a rectangle. And my width, I want it to be 137.335. Enter. Okay. Now it's a little big, but that's okay because we're going to adjust that. Whoops. Control Z to undo that. So I'm going to drag this down a little bit. Now what I want to do is I want to measure the coated area on my tumbler. So I'm going to grab my ruler and I'm 142. Okay. I really like the flag that I did earlier and it is about 120. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to make this 142. So I'm going to unlock and my height is going to be 142.0. Enter. Okay. Now I'm going to take that. I'm going to hit Control C. I'm going to copy it. And then I'm going to paste it. Whoops. Control C. Control V. There we go. Now, you can do this with Array if you want as well. And sometimes it's better because my mouse is a little touchy. And if I hit the arrow, yeah, it moves over way too much. So, but that is okay. I'm aligned down here on the bottom. This little tiny 0.001 millimeter section is not going to bother me a whole lot. Now, what I want to do is I'm going to take this flag and I'm going to bring this flag up here. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to rotate that 90 degrees. All right. So that's going to be one side of the cup. And I'm going to make that, I'm going to lock the height on this. And my height on the other one, on the cup that I did, was the right size. The size I want was 120 millimeters. So right there. Now what I'm going to do is I am going to take these and I want to align that vertically and I want to align it horizontally. That way I know it's in the center. Okay. Then I can take that. I can control C that. I can come over and control V that. Same thing. I'm going to align vertically. And then I'm going to align horizontally. Now that brought the whole thing up, but it's done on that flag. So I'm just going to drag it back down here a little bit. We'll zoom in. My vertical is good. I still have that tiny little overlap. And like I said, the array function is probably best to do this just to make two squares. But now what I want to do is I want to take that flag. Actually, accidentally moved it. And I'm going to rotate that one minus 90. And again, minus 90. Could have just done minus 180. So now that flag should be, well, it's on the bottom. That should be right. Yep. All right. So now we're good to go. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to move over here and we're going to put a mug or a tumbler inside of the rotary chuck. I'm going to show you guys how I level it because obviously these are beveled. As you can tell, it's fatter on the top than on the bottom. So they got a little bevel to them. And what I want to do is I'm gonna split the difference. So when I put it in the rotary chuck, I want the ends to be about at the same height, and I'm gonna split the difference on that. Okay, so I'll end up here is where I'm gonna actually do my focus. So let's move over and we'll get that set up and we'll get this thing burnt. Okay, so our rotary is all plugged in. We're all set for that. Now when I'm going to come down, I'm going to get this. See, my spoil board has a grid on it. So I'm going to set this so it's lined up on a grid, and I know my laser's lined up because I squared that up yesterday when I 3D printed the legs. So now I'm going to take my tumbler. I'm going to push it. Make sure that it is in there flat. So it's all the way up against each one of the arms here. And then I'm just going to give it a little twist, tighten it, roll it, make sure that it is all the way up against, and it is. Now, all I've got to do is I can adjust the height on this however I want. So what I typically do, I mean, it's real easy and it gets you close enough. You don't have to buy any fancy tool. Is I look right over the top edge of the laser, and if I can see this point and this point at the same time, and they're at the same height, then I know that I'm good. So right now, I'm looking over the top, and I can still see this side. So I'm gonna push this end down a little bit more, and as I go down, both ends disappear at the same time. So this is not up very much, okay? And there's also a little dial on the side here that will tell you, it goes, 0 to 360. It tells you exactly what angle that is, and you can remember. So right now I'm like on the second slash. Then I just want to make sure again that I'm squared up. Then I'm gonna pull my laser over. Now I've taken my protective lens cover off because I always wear my glasses when I'm doing the laser stuff. So, and it makes it easier. I just 3D printed this little box. I mean, there's nothing to it. It's not the greatest design, but it works, and I'll figure something else out. But what I do is I just go in and set that right there. Now I know I'm gonna drop that down just a little bit. Now it's sitting on top of there. I'll slide that back off, slide it out, and now I'm my laser focus is set. Then I'm just gonna look at it from the side. Make sure I'm at the apex or at the top of the mug. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and turn the power on. Now what I've got to do is make sure that I am centered. So I am going to, I don't want to do those squares that I made, the rectangles. So I'm going to delete those real quick. I'm going to delete that one. I'm going to delete that one. Now I want to make sure that I'm centered in the middle. So I'm going to hit frame. And I am not even close to being centered there. Okay, so I'm a dummy. You'll see what's happened here on my flags. So I rotated the one flag, but the problem is I'm doing a tumbler, which is this way. So I forgot to actually rotate both of those. So what I've got to do, see up here, I'm a big dummy. So now I'm just going to, if I go -90, and that is right. Okay, now we're good. Now let's try and frame that again. Let's turn that off. That looks to be pretty center. Inches. So 142, so I want about 71. That looks pretty close. So let's go ahead. Now we'll frame that again the right way this time. And it looks like I have got the same empty space on the bottom as I do towards the top end. So I think we're good. So let's go ahead and get this thing burned. Okay, so we're all done. Now all we got to do is take our mug and or our tumbler and get it cleaned off. So as you can see, so now if I'm drinking from this side, because I'm right-handed, the flag's in the right position both directions. So that was the whole reason I wanted to do it that way, for no other reason. Now, the only thing I did do, so usually when I remember to turn on my air assist, I'm pretty proud of myself. Because a lot of times I forget, and I don't know why. I've ruined a bunch of stuff. I guess I just blame it on old man memory, I guess. So I actually remember to turn my air assist on for this, but what I did not pay attention to is that when I put the flags in there, I had the speed and power settings for my blue tumbler, which are higher and faster than what I did my original red tumbler at. So we're going to clean this off and we're going to see how it looks. Hopefully I didn't screw it up too bad, because I'd like to be able to have this mugs that sell or something if it turns out. So anyway, so that's our mug, our tumbler. All I'm going to do is I am going to take a melamine sponge. I'm not going to use bartender's friend or barkeeper's friend or any of them expensive. None of that crap. All I did, I have a jug of water, melamine sponge, and I'm going to take that tumbler and I'm just going to clean it off. I think my power was way too high. Let's see if it comes off. But you can see that melamine sponge is getting all that stuff off. So, and that, I mean, that's it. Just melamine sponge and water. So what I'm seeing is that I got it a little discolored. And it's not real bad, but it has definitely got some discoloration on it because I burn it too high. Too hot for the red. I'm gonna wipe that thing off. I mean, it doesn't look bad, but there is just a little bit. Actually, it looks like there's something on the mug itself. So, I don't know if you guys can see this, but right here, there is a little spot on it that it looks like it was, when it was powder coated, it was either dirty or something. The rest of it actually came out okay. I mean, it didn't discolor, but that's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing a little spot on it. Huh. But all in all, that thing came out pretty good. Nice and clean. So normally on the red, the first red tumbler I did, I marked it down here at 140, I just engraved it down here, 140 millimeters a second at 60% power and 300 DPI was the setting that I did this one on. I screwed up. I actually did this on the blue, which was at 160 millimeters a second at 90% power. So yeah, I screwed up a little bit, but it still ended up coming out. Other than that little stain, and I think that is on the mug. That is not from the laser. it's just an odd shaped little stain there, but that's gonna ruin this cup or this tumbler, but you know, I can still use it. So anyway, not too shabby. So now you guys learned how to set up your rotary chuck in Lightburn. Always make sure that if you go to a different tumbler or a glass or something, you always want to measure that diameter so you can input that in the laser tools. Otherwise, it's going to throw your engraving off. One other thing, that if you guys forget to turn on the rotary, if you don't select that to turn it on, it will still actually engrave, it'll still etch. So I did this, and I did not turn, I didn't turn the chuck on, I didn't turn the rotary on, but what it did is, so it still turned, but it didn't have a diameter on it set. So what happened was it got really wide. So I mean, this little short guy is almost as wide as this tall one. So that's what happens when you don't turn the rotary on. It'll still work, but it's gonna be odd shape, you know. So anyway, guys, thank you for sticking around watching the video. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Make sure you hit the like button down there. The link to the tumblers that I'm using are going to be in the description below. The link to the Wizmaker, to the rotary chuck setup, and all that will all be in the description. I appreciate you guys coming along, and we will see you guys in the next video. Have a great weekend.